All right. So episode what, Riv? Episode what? Hurry up. He doesn't.
You know what?
even
You need to quit asking me these questions, okay? I'm not usually prepared. The first minute into the show.
You just show up.
But it is episode, I think, 28. Very excited. Almost at no, we're not.
It's episode 29. What's up, Elliotte?
Not much. What's going on with you guys? Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you as well. I look. You were asking Craig a question right off the start. You want to produce the first bit of this show? Fire away. Look, it's a big topic, the Winter Classic and the temperature. So, shoot.
Well, the question I have is, so watching the game the other night, the biggest difference between that 0-3 game, which was sort of the trial run, which is the one that really started it all, the granddaddy of them all, the Rose Bowl of outdoor games, was Montreal-Edmonton in my first year of Hockey Night in November 2003. And if you look at the thing they've learned the most in 20 years, it's, when it's that cold, now they know what to do with the ice. They learn. They said, okay, this is what we learned from that day about extreme cold and how to do it. And I remember, Craig, the ice was brittle. It was really brittle.
It was terrible.
There were a lot of rumors about whether or not the Oilers and the Canadiens were going to play that day. And the story I've always heard is that the players got together and said, we can't not play this game. It's too big, but we're going to do a no-hitter, and we're going to make this as easy as we can on each other. And I've always wondered, what's the truth? What really happened?
I think the biggest concern was not necessarily the cold. And when I say it was cold, it was...
I was there.
It was bone-chilling cold.
Yeah.
That being said, the biggest concern was the ice. The ice, it was so cold in Edmonton at that time that if you had a 200, 220-pound guy making a quick turn, he was not just cutting through the ice. He was taking chunks, like big chunks out of the ice. And it got to the point where I think the ice conditions were dangerous. And that was the concern. It wasn't whether we wanted to play because of how cold it was, because we would have played in even colder weather. It was just the environment for the very first time, the Heritage Classic, 60,000 people, in the stands, bundled up with layers upon layers to try and keep warm, because as a player, it was extremely cold. When I say you left the bench, you went out for your 45-second to a minute shift. It was the first probably time in NHL history that you had every single guy try and keep a shift under 35 seconds, because that's how cold it was. You'd go back to the bench, and we had these great big heaters and blowers where it was blowing so much hot air that you started to sweat. And that's not a good thing when you're playing outside, okay? You don't want to sweat. And we would go back on the ice, but the biggest thing was the danger of the ice. And I can still remember this to this day, that the old timers, the alumni game, just remembering like Guy Lafleur and Wayne Gretzky and Paul Coffey's and, you name it, you just go down the line. It was incredible watching these guys play, but they tore the ice up. I think it was the day before. If
yes,
I'm not
it
mistaken.
was.
Yeah. So I remember skating, and the ice was terrible. Like they shredded it, and it wasn't good. The biggest concern was the ice conditions and not the cold.
Yeah.
And that was the biggest concern, that someone was going to get injured in the game. I do not remember, because it's almost 20 years ago. I do not remember if we agreed on no hitting, because I just
Why'd you lay somebody out? You laid somebody out, didn't you?
I'm going to tell you this. It was too cold to hit. You did not want to hit. You really did not want to hit. You were out there, and this was a NHL game that was played, but it was so cold. And I'm going to tell you, every single one of us had a huge smile on our face
Mhm.
because we went back, some of us 10, 15 years, like we were little kids again out on the outdoor rink. And the atmosphere and everything leading up to that day was incredible.
Why, Elliotte? What sparks that conversation for you? Did someone say it was like a no hit?
Just like watching one of the players told me that there was an agreement, like basically they were told, and the Players Association, they're responsible for player safety, right? And they told them, it might not be safe to play, and the players said, we can't not do it. And one of them jokingly said to me, we agreed that nobody was going to hit anybody else. And I'm just wondering if you remember what those conversations were like in terms of whether or not you'd play or not, Craig.
Well, I remember there's a lot of discussion about, in particular, the ice, because the ice was really bad. And, you're playing at such a high level. You're playing for 2 points. You didn't want to toe pick yourself into the boards and get hurt. Like, that was the biggest concern, was the ice conditions was not good back then. We're talking 20 years ago. It was a trial, the first time an outdoor game, had ever been played. And, I think that was the concern. I don't think the concern, I do not remember anyone telling me that I couldn't hit.
No, it's not that you couldn't hit it. Like, it's just that we're not going to go out of our way to go hitting.
Listen, I'm going to tell you this. I mean,
those kinds of conversations, Elliotte, for a guy like Craig, that goes in one ear and out the other. He's like, not hit.
Don't even tell him.
Not hit. Are you kidding? They're probably like, don't even bring that up.
They had George Laraque. They had some really big boys on the other side. So it would have been in favor for the Montreal Canadiens not to hit. I will tell you that. I just remember it was so cold, and I loved every minute of it because I'm a northern boy through and through, and I skated as a young kid in that environment at that temperature. I remember being on the ice when I was a kid. I mean, bone chilling. So this, to me, I had the most fun I've probably ever had in an NHL game because it didn't feel like an NHL game. It didn't feel like we were actually playing an NHL game. It felt like it was just kind of like a big entertainment spectacle. We snapped it around, and it was a lot of fun, though. It was a lot of fun to be a part of it.
What's the feedback from this one, Elliotte? How did players feel about the temperatures? Because this was colder than that.
It was cold. There's no question about that. It was cold.
Was it colder though? Because I remember we had a certain temperature. I can't remember what it was, but with the wind chill in Edmonton that day,
I do think that the temperature was colder here, but the wind chill was colder there. Yeah, that's what I think. I remember I bought a pair of stylish boots for that one. They were Doc Martens. They just were not warm enough for that game. My feet
tax right off.
It wasn't. So my feet were blocks of ice at the alumni game on the Saturday, and then I ended up going by and buying a new pair of boots for the next day because I realized I had made a mistake.
Is this something that the league will consider going forward? I mean, the Winter Classic isn't going to go away, I would imagine.
No, it's too good.
So do these temperatures that they had over the weekend, do they make anybody nervous going forward for future events?
I think if you're playing on January 1st, then you're at the mercy of wherever you could be, right? And one of the things that kind of happens, guys, is that some of they've talked about going to Florida before. Like, Florida really wants to have a Lightning Panthers New Year's game, but you just know that in that situation you can't do it on January 1st. That's why they kind of moved it into other. Sorry, they can't do it on January 1st. The one thing I did notice this time is they moved it to 7:00, and there were some people saying, "Well, how come it's at 7:00 and not at 12:30 or 1:00?" And I think they've finally realized that they have too much trouble with the sun. They had trouble with the sun in Tahoe. They had trouble with the sun in Winnipeg. And I think they've just finally said, you know what, if we're going to do it at 7:00, we're going to have a better chance with the weather. And I get that. I do. It's not going anywhere. It's too big a deal.
Yeah.
How big of a moneymaker is that for the NHL?
Put it this way, Craig. I have a feeling that game was getting played no matter what. Like if there would have been one game played in 2 months because of COVID, it was going to be the Winter Classic.
Yeah.
Well, you talk about one game.
And they spend a lot on it too.
So what you're saying, Elliotte, is they were going to cover up the COVID positive tests under any circumstances.
That's
to play
not
that
what
game.
he's saying, Riv. I can't believe you.
That's what I'm saying.
I will say this, Riv. I was surprised that St. Louis played Edmonton on the Thursday night. I was.
Yeah.
I was
just in case,
surprised.
right?
Just in case. Minnesota, once they had their game on the 27th postponed, they were free until Winter Classic. I was surprised that Edmonton and St. Louis played.
Let's talk about Edmonton for a second. They have gone on quite a slide. I think at one point they were 16-5 in the record, and now I think they're 18-12, maybe. I think it is if I'm correct. I've been reading, is Tippett on the hot seat? Is he going to be fired?
I mean, the one thing I do think there is that, the pressure is growing. There's no question about that. I definitely think that's the case. A month ago, as you said, I think we were all saying, okay, it's not like they're going to coast to the playoffs, but you really like the position that Edmonton's in.
Yeah.
And now, Calgary passed them last night, and, with their win, and they've got games in hand. All of a sudden, you're in Edmonton, you're in the wild card 2 position, and you're in a dogfight. And I don't think anybody expected it to change that quickly right away. And I do think the pressure is growing there. Like you can't not go to the playoffs if you're the Oilers. It's not an option. And the Babcock rumors came out last weekend. Ken Holland threw cold water on them when I reached out to him. But I think that is indicative of the pressure that they are under to make sure they make the playoffs this year. Failure is not an option.
What is going on? Where are their weaknesses? When you have go and state arguably the 2 best players in the world on the same team, we all know that the game of hockey is won and lost by a team. Okay. Yeah. A full team. And I look through their lineup. It's not like they do not have some really good hockey players. What is the reasoning? Are they blaming it on the depth right now?
I think that's that. Well, first of all, Smith has been hurt and he got hurt again. And, I think they've had, Koskinen's given them an odd good game here or there. Skinner's given them some good games here and there, but generally when they don't have Smith, they really struggle. And now he's hurt again. They said that it's day to day, but the last time he was day to day, it was a while. So I think that's part of the thing that they're worried about. I'm just.
So are we talking about the 40-year-old goaltender is the savior for Edmonton?
He was last year. He had an MVP level season last year. But what you just said there is the key, right? When you're banking on a 40-year-old goaltender, you just don't know what you're going to get or what you're not going to get. Yeah. Look, one of the things I'm just looking up here is, Edmonton this year, when McDavid and Draisaitl are not on the ice at 5-on-5, it looks like they're getting outscored 2-1.
That's concerning.
Yes.
That's really concerning when you're talking about building a team for the playoffs and to win.
See, the thing is,
but have they done some patchwork there too? You're bringing in, Duncan Keith, who is, in my impression, he's going to be a Hall of Famer. He is fantastic, but he's also, how old is he?
37, maybe
37, 38. Yeah. I mean, that's if that's what they're banking on, I think they're in the wrong direction. You know, Cody Ceci they brought in to try and stabilize the defense core. He's another one that maybe hasn't panned out, you know, as much as what they would like. I just, you know, they have some very talented hockey players, but it just seems like they, you know, there's a lot of pressure. I wonder if Connor McDavid and guys like Draisaitl can handle the pressure, but the players that are behind these players, I think they feel a tremendous amount of player too. And I'm not sure if they can handle what's going on right now, because there is a lot of focus because you have two of the best players in the world on your team and you're not winning games.
Well, as you guys know, when you have two players like that, what's the key? The key is that everybody else doesn't get filled in. If everybody else can play to 50%, then you're going to be okay, right? Because you think that those two players are going to dominate. You can't handle being outscored 2-1 when those guys are not on the ice.
So let me ask you the ridiculous question. When does the Connor McDavid misery clock start?
Oh God. That one's always one that's going to be a lot of fun to answer. Look, I think this, look, you see that guy. He absolutely cannot stand to lose. He absolutely hates losing. And, I think look, if they miss the playoffs this year, it's trouble. I'm not coming.
What kind of trouble are you? What kind of trouble are we talking? Like McDavid asking for a trade type trouble?
I'm not coming on here and saying that. There's just no way I'm doing that because it's such a firestorm. Until a couple of years ago, I went on the air and I said they have 2 years to get it right, and they were going in the right direction, and so I kind of put that away. Let's see what happens first. I'm not. If I come on here and I say they missed the playoffs, McDavid asked for a trade, it's just a disaster. And so let's see how it all plays out.
Well, look. What I say
and
certainly.
The other thing too, and Andrew, is that I don't know that the honest truth is I haven't asked him. If I was ever going to come on here and say that, I will have asked him first.
You mean ask McDavid?
Yeah.
Okay, so. Look,
and he's not going to answer that question right now.
He would never. He'll never answer that question, even if he is miserable. I mean, you just saw I said, I think on here, or maybe even on our old live show, that it's not an indictment on McDavid or Draisaitl. It's that even it's going to be hard, even with those two players, to lure free agents to Edmonton. Even I don't know how they did it in Pittsburgh. I don't know what the magic is with Crosby, but guys just seem to just keep wanting to go there, wanting to go to Pittsburgh, play with Crosby, play with Malkin, and all those players.
Because they're winners. When you're a winner, you want to feel that. Just like it's, whether you're going to Chicago or going to, Tampa Bay and taking less money to play on those teams. That's where you're going to have an opportunity to win. Right now, McDavid has not won anything. He's won scoring titles, but those are individual things. Okay.
And he wants to win. He wants to win.
He wants to win, but to go to Edmonton, which when I played in the league and Petey played in the league, I think you can attest to this too, Andrew, is Edmonton was one of the worst or the least destination spot that you would want to play. They were in a top 5 in the national. By
far, Edmonton was the least desired place to go and play.
Yeah.
And now you have, two of the greatest players in the game, but in order to win championships, you need a full team, and I just look at this. I'm like, I couldn't tell you who's even on the second and third line here. That's the problem with this hockey team. When we talked about back in the day, whether it was the late 90s or the 2000s, and we talked about the Detroit Red Wings, yes, we talked about, whether it was way back in Larry Onoff, Shanahan, you had all those guys, or you knew who their fourth line was.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You knew Chris Draper, Kurt Malpe, and Darren McCarty.
Mm-hmm.
You knew those guys, and they were playing literally on the best team in the National Hockey League. Detroit Red Wings did not win all of those championships just because of their top two lines. I'm telling you this. They won because of the depth throughout their lineup. And when you have a fourth line that was so nasty and tenacious and killed penalties and were physical and did all of that brunt work, but still had offensive abilities, that's when you knew how great that team was. You look at the Edmonton Oilers, I couldn't tell you right now who's on that fourth line. I couldn't even tell you who's on the third line. That's where they need to fix. That's where you need to fix it.
Let's speaking of championships, let's shift gears here. World Juniors were canceled due to COVID outbreak. Elliotte, I've talked to a few people that are not obviously working for the IIHF, but it just sounds like from the beginning that the whole thing was kind of, mishandled, with the players being in everyday hotels with weddings and so on and so forth going on, and everyone's family around. And what are they going to do about this? I mean, I guess they're not going to do anything about it, but what a huge loss for all these young players, that this could be the furthest that they ever get in their, there are some players on Canada that we'll see again in the NHL, but there are some other players in this tournament that this is the pinnacle of their career.
Yeah, I felt terrible for those kids. Some of it was not preventable, just in terms of Omicron, just the way it completely overwhelmed the world. I don't, if you go back a month, guys, we didn't know what we were in for here. Nobody did. So some of it was out of their hands, but it also seems like some of it was they didn't do a good enough job of keeping the players away from the general public, right? And I think it became obvious once Omicron started to go, you were going to have to keep players away from the general public. It was their only chance. But, the other thing too is I heard the referees the officials really got hammered bad, and there was a possibility they were going to lose all of them too. It just became apparent that they were going to get to a point where they were not going to be able to keep this thing going. I think they'll find a way to do it. I think they will. I think that some of these federations are going to start this week looking into, how can we put this on a bit later. I think it would be very interesting to see, would they do it before the draft? Would they do it after the draft? Ron McLean had an idea. Maybe you put it on in the afternoon of the Stanley Cup final, or some of the off nights during the Stanley Cup final before the draft. That way you can give some players some chances to play some high intensity hockey right before the NHL draft. It can help their stock.
So they still want to try to get this thing finished.
I do think that there's going to be attempts to do that. Now, it always comes down to money, but I do think that there are going to be conversations about
There's
that.
going to be some backlash on some of those other tournaments that were canceled, the women's tournaments, and
I think they're going to try to do. I think they're going to try to do the same thing with that too. For example, both USA Hockey and the Ontario Women's Hockey Federation have said that they would like to host it. One of the things, and you learn the world is run by lawyers, right? And one of the things that lawyers talk about is proper use of words. And in the IIHF, there's apparently a big difference between cancellation and postponement. Cancellation means that the IIHF is off the hook. Postponement means that the IIHF is still financially on the hook. And I'm told that that's a reason that lawyers make a lot of money, because they make sure the proper wording gets used.
Okay, so
I have a question. If this World Junior Tournament was played in Michigan, is it canceled?
That's a great question. I think what it comes down to is, Craig, some of these kids are minors. How would you feel about it?
They're the most healthy people on the planet, Elliotte.
Yeah, I think there's certainly people who feel that way too, and at times I do also. I don't deny that. I think that again, in a world that's run by lawyers,
Politicians.
well, no, the politicians have no idea what they're doing. Lawyers actually do, I think, in a lot of cases. Lawyers will say that you always have to govern by the worst case scenario, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if it was, I'd say if it was in Michigan, there would be a better chance of it going on, but I wouldn't say it's a guarantee.
So what happens now in Canada with the NHL and all the rules there? I mean, Quebec has a 10 o'clock curfew.
Yeah.
Where are we going to see it? I mean, I keep going back to the business side of the game, and
Yeah.
I cannot. Being a former player rep for just a few years, and you learn about the value of HRR and every single dollar that goes in to hockey revenue. I don't know well, I mean, I'm sure they can, but how much more of a blow can the players and the league and everybody associated with HRR, the agents, how much more of a blow can they take before something drastic happens?
I don't know. I think it's a great question. One of the things that we're seeing right now is, I had players saying, in Canada on Friday night, watching the college football games, like the two bowl championship semifinals in front of big crowds, and, sending texts saying, what are we doing here? And, but if you publicly say that, there's fierce pushback. And, I saw Andrew Raycroft tweeted the other day, showed a game in the States and a game in Canada, and said, is this in the same league? And, look, like we just heard what Craig had to say. You talk to 100 people, you're going to get 100 different positions. This is, people are worn out. They're tired. They have COVID fatigue. Everybody's got COVID fatigue. It's leading to all this craziness online. No matter what you do, people are going to hate you for it. I think what's going on up here, though, Andrew, is that once the third week of January comes around, the league is going to say, we don't have any more room to postpone games. If we want to finish the regular season at the end of April, and they do not want to extend it, then you're going to have to play no matter what. And I think that's kind of where we are right now.
And the Canadian government isn't going to care about fans in the stands or HRR, are they? I mean, it's we're looking at potentially more games without fans.
They've made some exceptions. There's no question. They've allowed the teams some rights at times that they haven't given to everyone else, but not when it comes to this. I don't see that.
So has there been changes to the league COVID protocol and how they're going to deal with, players with symptoms, or how they're testing?
Well, basically, if you saw the CDC, they're adopting it, and even some of the Canadian provinces have adopted that, which I'm surprised about.
I was shocked by that.
Yeah, so
no PCR test for people without symptoms, right?
Well, you can't get them here anyway.
Yes,
like now in Ontario, you can't get one.
Okay, so let's change gears again. There was that hit Bennett on Paquette, and he was suspended a couple games. I don't necessarily want to talk about the hit in particular.
Mm-hmm.
I want to talk about the Board of Governors meetings, and I want to talk about these hits. Are they discussed, these open ice hits? I mean, are we ever going to see a point where these hits are taken out of the game of hockey, where they're telling Sam Bennett, go and play the puck? Craig, I know you're not in favor of this. I know you love hard-nosed hockey and you want to see these bone-crushing hits.
Bone-crushing hit.
It's head-jarring. It's head-jarring, which is worse than bone-crushing, in my opinion.
So you're going to have to take out body contact if you don't want head-jarring.
Well,
I mean, Sam Bennett was not going in to make that hit to the head.
I guess we are going to talk about the hit, Elliotte. No, but do you understand my question? I mean, like, we're just making matters worse by just not eliminating these hits. I mean, you're putting every single open ice hit on display just by having it, and I just wonder if conversation.
He did hit him in the head
for sure.
Yeah, like look, like Trouba hammered two players, Kara, who thankfully is back playing because that looked really bad, and McKinnon, and nothing because they were clean hits. You know what the thing is, Andrew, is that when you guys played, there were 10 hits like that a game. Now there's 10 hits like that a year. And I also think in the social media era, people have trouble handling injuries. Like nobody wants to see people get hurt. And now whenever someone's injured in any sport, look at Antonio Brown yesterday. And that's not an injury, that's a different situation. But look at what a big deal it becomes immediately. Yeah. Like everything becomes a big deal. And you either get caught up in all of it or you get desensitized to all of it. And I think because there are so few big hits anymore in the NHL, every time one happens, it becomes a thing. Now, I was surprised he got 3 games, but I did think he got the head.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
I can handle one game, and I'll shut my mouth, and I won't say another word. But 3 games for that hit is, to me, it's just, again, like I scratch my head, and I literally feel that I am such a minority or a dinosaur when it comes to all these hits. There's difference if there's targeting, and he is not targeting. He went to make a body check. It's not like his elbow is up. He came in with his arm tucked down. Paquette's looking at his skates and has his head down, and he's in a vulnerable position. I think that's what they're trying to take out of the game is players that are vulnerable, right? And it's just, for me, it's too much. 3 games for that hit is too much.
Well, the one thing I do wonder about, and I just thought of it while you were talking there, was he was suspended a game in the playoffs last year for a hit from behind. And generally they feel that a playoff game is worth 2 games in the first round. So I wonder if they're saying you got caught for a reckless play last year. Here's another one.
Yeah.
So, and that does matter if they decide.
Absolutely. Repeat offenders, you gotta show them that, hey, this is not going to be acceptable. But
you brought up Antonio Brown. That was Craig actually wanted to lead the show with that, but you had the question about the Heritage Classic that I wanted to give you the floor for. Mm-hmm. What'd you think about that? This guy's troubled, man. This guy's troubled, and I'll tell you, I hope that someone tries to, if he's even open to it, but he needs some help.
Well, that's what obviously that's what Brady said, and that's also what the great center, the Hall of Fame center from the Pittsburgh Steelers, Mike Webster, who had a lot of unfortunate concussion. Concussion led to a lot of issues for him later in life. He was a great player, a Hall of Famer. His son went on Twitter and said the same thing, that he needs help. I take a look at it and I see a situation where, you almost have to stop giving him opportunities to play. You have to put him in a situation where he can get help, but you might have to say, he can't play football because A, we can't depend on you, and B, it's almost blocking you from getting that help. Like that's one of the situations where, and one of the guys I know who really tries a lot about this is Glenn Healy, who runs the alumni, who says to people and says to the league and the Players Association, maybe a player's career is done, but that doesn't mean they don't need help. And we have an obligation to help those people. And that's where I kind of look at Antonio Brown right now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I just look, we know the cliche, right? Like, when you're out of the game, you don't matter anymore type thing. And I just hope that this is front and center. It's so front and center, and it has been for a couple of years now that it's almost unavoidable. It's almost to the point where I'm sitting here thinking, okay, number one, exactly what you said. How is he still getting jobs? And number two, like in terms of playing, and number two, how is somebody not? Now he has to be receptive to help, but
can he be picked up? Can he be picked up right now if a team wanted him?
Yeah, he could, but that's the part of the problem is that you're saying, okay, there's going to be no punishment for this behavior. We're just going to pick you up. Then that convinces a person they don't need help.
That's a fair point. It's a fair point. What's the big news going in the blog tomorrow, other than the Heritage Classic temperatures and the ice?
I don't know yet. I'm going to start calling around to figure out. We'll see what goes on here. Pretty soon. I assume Eichel's coming back soon.
What's the timetable on that?
Well, he's supposed to go back to rejoin the.
So is he still in Carolina?
I think so. It's going to check today.
How much when you talk about Eichel, the only thing I think about is that disc replacement surgery, and I wonder the whole medical world is going to be watching to see
Tyler Johnson too.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but he's a little further behind in the timetable, isn't he?
Yeah, but he's skating with the Blackhawks. He's around there. Guys like this, to me, this is no longer an Eichel Buffalo thing. It's simply a quality of care. I hope it works thing.
You know what? Same here. I mean, it would be a shame for a talent like that to have to disappear from the game because of a neck injury so soon. I mean, love him or hate him here in Buffalo, it doesn't matter. We're talking about one of the best talents that we've seen in years.
If you're a Buffalo fan, that means you're a hockey fan. And if you're a hockey fan, you want the best players in the world to be skating on the ice. And, it did not work out here in Buffalo. And it's not from Jack Eichel not giving, what he could to try and, right the ship here. And listen, there was mistakes made on both sides. But I just want to see Jack Eichel back. I want to see him back. I want to see him playing at a high level. I want to see, because you know what? It allows me as a Buffalo fan here, okay, and to watch my former teams that I played on. But it also allows me to watch the Vegas Golden Knights a little bit closer, okay, now because of Jack Eichel and what he's going to do out there. And I hope he plays well. I hope he does well. I wish all the best for Jack.
Last thing I'll ask you, Elliotte, before we let you go. Tell me who wrote this. The NHL and NHLPA can change the rules of the CBA, add a taxi squad so they don't miss any games and don't lose any money, which has already been agreed upon that the players will pay back in escrow until the owners are made whole from what they have lost during this pandemic, regardless how many games are missed. Yet they can't do a taxi squad during the Olympics, so they can honor the agreement they made so the NHL players can go. Please tell me that's not bullshit. And for all of you who want, I'm reading this on a small, for all of you who want to pipe back about forfeiting pay while being gone, yeah, not a problem. Let the players make their choice.
I know who that is. That's Marchand.
Yeah.
Will
that be heard by the league and the PA?
Yeah, they definitely heard it. It certainly got amplified enough. First of all, I don't have a problem. We always say athletes are too boring with what they say, and then we rip them when they say anything. So I have no problem with what Marchand said. I think it's too simplistic, unfortunately, in some ways. I wonder how, for example, how would the Bruins feel? Marchand, they're in a battle to make the playoffs this year. Their math is good. They got a lot of games in hand. But, how would the Bruins feel if they went, I don't know, 0-6 while he was away and some because there's no way anybody on the taxi squad is going to be as good as Brad Marchand. So how would you feel if you were 0-6 while he was away at the Olympics? It's the one thing that happened here, and I don't know, Andrew, you were a player rep. So was
Craig.
Oh, okay. I didn't know, Craig, you were too.
Yeah, Montreal.
What? I don't know what happened here. I don't know if the players didn't do a good enough job of understanding what the deal was, or the Players Association didn't do a good enough job of telling them. The players thought it was going to be their choice, and that was what the deal was supposed to be. But the league did say, look, if we get too many cancellations and people can't go, we're going to have to pull back. And that was agreed to. And that's what the league did. And I don't know. I guess people like Marchand didn't know about it. I don't know. I mean, I understand his frustration. It's his one chance to play in the Olympics. I get it. But at the end of the day, the league finances, I guess, have to come first, whether he likes it or not. It's
100%.
It's the deal they made.
I understand that as a player, I understand that, Brad Marchand, this is probably his last opportunity that he will have to play in an Olympics. That being said, what's happening right now around the world and everything with that's COVID related, it just does not make sense to, even if you had the opportunity to make a decision, I mean, to go over there and chance that you could be there from 3 to 5 weeks in quarantine in China. If you test positive, I mean, I just think that to me is a selfish act.
That's not a chance I'd be willing to take.
Exactly. No
chance.
So listen, I understand his frustration. I understand that he's allowing his frustrations to come out through the media, which is, fine. But I just look at all of, Petrangelo was concerned with this too and said, this just doesn't make sense. If we're in a situation where we're going to have to quarantine for 3 to 5 weeks, it doesn't.
How would you
sense.
feel, Elliotte? Because you'd probably be over there covering it, wouldn't you?
I wasn't going over. If I was going to work the Olympics this year, I was going to work it from here.
Okay.
You know what I actually said was, if I was a young single guy on a terrible team, I would go.
Yes, 100%.
Let's get all the young single guys on terrible teams and send them to the Olympics.
The tough thing is, though, for example, like, the other thing too is, like, if you saw Stamkos, who does have a gold medal, even though he couldn't play because of injury, he basically said he was going. Like, I think if you discuss it with your family and your wife is okay with it, then that's your decision.
But this is coming from a guy who's won 2 Stanley Cups. Okay.
But he's never played at the
and has never played in the Olympics.
Has never played at the Olympics. Like, I think, like, honestly, like, I got to tell you something. If I was married, and whether with or without kids, my wife would have a big say on whether I went or not. The other thing too is, if I played for a team that was really good or battling to make the playoffs, and you knew making the playoffs was meaningful, like, I'll tell you guys a story. In 2018, when the NHL didn't go, CBC offered me to go to the Olympics and host hockey. And Sportsnet said, if you want to go, you can go. You can leave the broadcast team and you can go. And I really agonized over it, because I love the Olympics and I want to cover as many Olympics as I can. But I felt it was the wrong thing to do, was leave my primary employer and leave the group of people I work with. And so I decided not to go. And it was an agonizing decision, and it sucked. But I just think you have a responsibility to your number one employer and your teammates. And that's why I couldn't go in that situation. And look, if the NHL was not playing and it was up to the individual players, which is what the players understood it was going to be, I've got no problem with Brad Marchand doing that. But if it was me, I couldn't leave my team. I just don't think I could.
Elliotte, thanks for the time, man. Appreciate it as always.
My pleasure, guys. Have a great week.
Did you guys coordinate the AC/DC shirts? That's the question.
No,
were there hidden texts going back and forth?
No, I got my AC/DC shirt underneath here. No,
let's go.
All right.
Happy New Year, Elliotte.
Happy New Year,
guys. My pleasure.
That's a wrap on another episode of After the Whistle. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter, After the Whistle, and at Craig Rivet 52, at the Instigator 76. And you can find us, as you already know, on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube, and anywhere else where you can get your podcasts. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to spread the word.